When a sheltered Omega sneaks into forbidden territory, she's captured by the Alpha twins, rivals cursed to share everything, including her fate. But as dawn nears, she learns their secret isn't lust, it's the prophecy that could destroy them all. Hey everyone! Before we dive into today's video, please do subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below. It truly amazes me how far our community reaches around the world. All right, now let's begin. The sound of chains echoed through the damp cave, clinking softly with every shiver of her trembling wrists. Aylin's breath came in shallow gasps, her heart racing faster than the storm raging outside. Cold moonlight spilled through the cracked stone ceiling, bathing her pale skin in silver. Her torn dress clung to her knees, streaked with dirt and blood. Not hers, but someone else's. Across from her stood two men. No, not men. Wolves in human form. Massive, broad-shouldered, eyes burning gold beneath the torchlight. "We warned you never to cross the ridge," one said, voice low like thunder before it breaks. The other leaned closer, his shadow swallowing her whole. "But now that you have, little Omega," he murmured, his tone half threat, half sorrow, "we'll both take turns watching over you, till dawn." Aylin didn't understand. She wasn't supposed to be here. She'd only wanted to see the moon from the forbidden cliffs, to feel the wind her mother once spoke about. But now she was trapped before the Alpha twins of the Blood Ridge Pack, Kale and Rorin, the cursed brothers of the North. One carried fury in his eyes, the other grief. "I didn't mean to trespass," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. "Please, just let me go." Kale's jaw clenched. "If we do," he said, "the curse kills us both before sunrise." Rorin looked away, guilt swimming behind his golden gaze. "And if we don't," he added softly, "you'll learn why no Omega survives the night." The torchlight trembled as wind howled through the cave. Something ancient stirred in the dark. Aylin felt it, power thrumming beneath her skin, something she didn't know she had. Rorin's head snapped up first, sensing the air. Kale took a slow step back, his muscles coiled like a beast ready to strike. "She's glowing," Rorin muttered. Aylin looked down, her veins shimmered faintly with silver light. Her pulse hammered in her ears. What's happening to me?" she cried. Kel's voice cracked through the rising panic. "You shouldn't exist," he whispered. "The last moon-touched Omega died a century ago." Rorin knelt before her, his hand hesitating inches from her chains. "Aylin," he said, as if he already knew her name. "Our father's prophecy, it spoke of you, the one who would return the moon's balance or burn it to ash." She shook her head violently. "I'm no one," she screamed. "I'm just a girl from the village." Kale's rage broke through his control. "No," he growled, voice shaking the stones. "You're the reason the curse woke. You stepped across the ridge, and now fate's clock is turning again." The cave pulsed with energy. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. Outside, the storm split the sky in two. As lightning cracked above the mountain, Aylin's chains glowed white-hot. The metal snapped. She gasped as invisible force threw her forward into Kale's arms, his heat searing, his heartbeat wild. "Stay still," he hissed, holding her as if she might vanish. But her body shimmered brighter, light spilling from her eyes. Rowan's voice trembled with awe. "She's becoming one of us." Kale looked down at her trembling face, at the tears catching moonlight. "No," he said slowly, his voice breaking. "She's becoming something the world isn't ready for." When the light finally died, the cave fell silent, too silent. Smoke curled where her chains had melted into puddles of silver. Aylin's vision blurred, her head pounding like thunder in her skull. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse gasp escaped. Romance steadied her gently, his large hands trembling despite his strength. "She's alive," he whispered, almost to himself. Kale's chest heaved as he stared at her, his jaw clenched in something between anger and disbelief. "Alive," he muttered, "and glowing." The torchlight flickered against the walls, painting strange shapes that looked almost like wings. "Tell me," Aileen rasped, clutching her chest, "what did you do to me?" Kale's gaze softened for the first time. "You did this to yourself," he said quietly. "You woke the curse." They led her outside. The storm had passed, leaving the world drenched in silver moonlight. From the cliff's edge, Aileen could see the valley far below, her home distant and small, swallowed by mist. Kale and Roran stood side by side, their silhouettes stark against the glowing horizon. "Our pack has guarded the ridge for generations," Roran began. "Every century, the moon chooses one omega to carry the lost power of balance. But the last one, she failed." Kale's voice cut in like a blade. "And when she died, the curse split us. One brother cursed to fury, the other to mercy. If either of us falls, the other dies." Aileen's heart pounded as their words sunk in. "And me?" she asked softly. Kale met her eyes. "You're the reason it's starting again." The twins exchanged a look, and Aileen saw it, grief older than time. "Our father," Roran said, voice low, "was the last true Alpha King. The curse began with him." His words painted the night like memories carved in blood. A throne shattered by betrayal, a queen who ran under the blood moon. Twin sons born in the same minute, fated to share one destiny. Kale's jaw tightened. "He made us swear we'd never let another moon-touched Omega live. But when you stepped across the ridge," he looked at her, eyes filled with conflict. "You reminded us of her, the Omega who doomed him, the one he loved." The wind hissed through the rocks, carrying the smell of pine and iron. "And now," Roran said softly, "we don't know if you're here to finish what she started or undo it." Aileen hugged herself as the chill bit through her torn dress. Her mind raced, each word from them sinking deeper. Could she really be what they said? Some kind of chosen one? "I'm not special. I was just curious about the ridge, that's all." Roran's eyes softened, glowing gold beneath the moon. "Curiosity awakens the oldest truths." Kale turned away, frustrated. "Truth or not, she can't stay here. The pack will smell her by dawn." Aileen's stomach twisted at his words. She didn't belong here, yet something in her chest ached at the thought of leaving. "Then take me home," she pleaded. Kale looked over his shoulder. "We can't," he said. "You crossed the ridge. You belong to its curse now." The moon began to sink, and a strange stillness settled over the mountain. Aileen felt it again, that pull in her blood, a whisper calling her deeper into the woods. "Something's watching us," she said quietly. Roran tensed. "No one comes this high," he muttered. But Kale drew his blade from his belt, silver gleaming in the dark. "Not unless it's already too late." Before anyone could speak, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A deep, guttural howl tore through the silence, one that didn't sound like a wolf at all. Aileen stumbled back, her eyes wide. "What was that?" she whispered. Kale's face turned pale. "The curse," he said. "It knows you're awake." The sound came again, long, guttural and wrong. It wasn't just a howl, it was grief, hunger, and fury twisted into one. The air around them trembled. Aileen felt the vibration in her bones as stones rolled down the cliffside. "Move," Kale backed, grabbing her arm. His grip was strong, hot, but trembling. Roran spun, scanning the tree line, his nostrils flaring. "It's inside the boundary," he muttered. "That's impossible." The wind carried the scent of blood and ash. Aileen's knees went weak. "What is it?" she whispered. Kale didn't look back as he pulled her deeper into the woods. "It's what happens when the moon never sleeps," he said grimly. "Something crawls out that was never meant to wake." The forest, once alive with crickets and whispers, was now dead silent, watching. They ran until the trees grew so thick the moonlight couldn't reach. Aline stumbled, breath ragged, every branch scraping her arms. The sound followed, closer now, wet steps, heavy breathing. Roran stopped, suddenly, throwing an arm out to shield her. "It's behind us." Kale unsheathed his silver blade again, his muscles tense, eyes glowing faintly gold. The thing emerged from the mist, a shape shifting and wrong, made of shadows and bones that didn't belong together. Its eyes burned red like dying coals. "A corrupted," Kale whispered. "The curse took flesh." Aline's heart pounded. She could feel something in her blood react, heat rising, light staring beneath her skin. "Stay behind me," Kale ordered. But as the creature lunged, Aline's instincts betrayed her. She screamed, not in fear, but in power. Her scream shattered the night. Silver light burst from her palms, searing through the mist. The creature froze mid-air, howling as its flesh melted like wax under a torch. Kale shielded his eyes, but Roran stared in awe. The light swirled, forming strange runes across Aline's arms, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. "Moonfire," Roran whispered. "It's real." The beast's cry faded, leaving only smoke and the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Aline collapsed to her knees, trembling, the light flickering out. Kale rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. "What are you?" he breathed, his voice rough with awe, and something else, fear. She met his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, but I think the moon does." Roran crouched beside them, his face pale. "She destroyed it," he murmured. "The curse's creature. She burned it out of existence." Kale looked at Aline as if seeing her for the first time. No Omega should have that power. Aline pressed a hand to her chest, still shaking. "You said the curse started when your father fell. Maybe it ends with me." Kale's eyes hardened. "Or maybe it ends you." The words hit her like a slap, but behind his anger, she saw fear. Fear of losing control, of caring too much. The silence stretched until Roran stood and said softly, "We can't stay here. If the corrupted found her scent, others will too." Kale nodded reluctantly. "Then we move before dawn." He turned to Aline. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her legs felt like air. They trekked through the forest at the first hints of dawn broke through the horizon. Aline glanced back once at the smoke rising from where the creature had died. "Why does the moon never sleep?" she asked quietly. Roran smiled sadly. "Because its children never stop dreaming." Kale didn't speak. He walked ahead, his hand tight on his blade, as though the world itself might turn on them. But Aline noticed something. His steps slowed when she stumbled. His shoulders tensed when she gasped. Beneath the warrior's anger was something protective, something dangerous. As the sun rose, the three figures disappeared into the mist. Two cursed alphas and the glowing Omega who could either free them or destroy them all. By dawn, the forest had softened. Mist wove through the tall pines like silk threads, and birds began to sing again. Aelin stumbled after the twins, her legs aching, the glow on her skin dimming with the light. "We're here," Roran said, his tone gentler than before. Through the trees, a cabin appeared, ancient and half swallowed by ivy, built of dark timber and stone. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney. Aelin blinked. "You live here?" Kale nodded once. "No one comes this far north. It's safe." As they entered, warmth hit her like a wave. The scent of burning pine filled the air, and old maps covered the walls. It didn't feel like a house. It felt like a secret buried alive. Aelin ran her fingers along the table. "You've been hiding," she said quietly. Kale's silence was the only answer she needed. Her wounds were minor, scratches and bruises, but Roran tended to them as if she were fragile glass. He worked silently, careful and kind, his large hands surprisingly gentle. "You shouldn't have survived that blast," he murmured, wrapping a cloth around her wrist. "The moonfire should have burned through you." Aelin watched the flames in the hearth dance. "Maybe it wants me alive," she said softly. Roran smiled faintly. "Or maybe it wants to see what you'll do next." Across the room, Cale leaned against the window, watching the trees beyond like a predator on edge. His golden eyes flicked toward her every few seconds. Though he said nothing, his silence was heavy, protective, and terrifying all at once. For a moment, Aelin wondered which one she feared more, the curse outside or the one staring at her from across the firelight. As the morning stretched into quiet, Roran broke the silence. "You should know," he said, glancing at Cale, "why he doesn't trust you." Cale shot him a warning look, but Roran continued anyway. "When the curse struck, it bound our lives together. His pain is mine. His anger is mine. And every night we both dream the same dream. A girl standing in moonlight, calling our names before everything burns." Aelin froze. "That girl," she said softly, "was me." Cale's head snapped up. "You've seen it too?" She nodded. "Since I was a child. I thought it was just a dream." Roran leaned back, eyes wide with realization. "Then it's not a dream. It's a memory waiting to happen." Cale's gaze lingered on her, haunted and searching, as if he'd known her long before that night. Later, while Roran slept near the fire, Aelin stood outside, watching the mist roll through the trees. The air smelled of pine and snow. She hugged her arms, lost in thought. Behind her, the door creaked open. Cale stepped out, shirtless beneath the moon's soft glow, scars tracing his chest like lightning. "You should rest," he said. She turned, startled. "I can't sleep." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You saw the creature. You felt the power. You think that kind of thing lets you rest easy?" Aelin's eyes met his. "I think it's not done with me." His expression softened just for a heartbeat. "Then we'll keep you alive till it is." The wind lifted her hair between them. He caught a strand, hesitated, then let it fall. For the first time, Cale looked less like a beast and more like a man terrified to care. When she finally drifted to sleep, her dreams were strange. She saw the twins again, bound by chains of silver light, both reaching toward her as the moon split in two. One brother burned, the other froze. And above them, a voice whispered through the dark, "Only the chosen can end the turning." She awoke with a gasp, heart pounding. The fire had gone cold. Cale sat by the door, awake, ice fixed on her as though he hadn't slept at all. "Bad dream?" he asked quietly. Aelin nodded. "No," she whispered. "A warning." Outside, the moon began to wane, bleeding pale into the dawn. And far away, beyond the ridge, something else stirred. A howl, not of beasts, but of men marching in search of the one girl who could break the curse. The morning broke with silence, too sharp to be peaceful. Even the birds had gone quiet. Cassell stood at the edge of the clearing, his jaw tight, nostrils flaring. "They're coming," he said. Roran rose from beside the fire, hand going instinctively to the blade at his hip. Pack or strangers? Cassell's golden eyes darkened. Both. Aelin stepped into the doorway, her hair tangled, her voice trembling. "Who's coming?" Cassell turned to her, and for the first time she saw fear in his face, not for himself, but for her. "Hunters," he said. "The Alpha Council sent them. They can smell moonfire from miles away." The words sank like ice in her veins. "They want me dead?" she whispered. Roran met her gaze sadly. "No, Aelin. They want to cage you and use you to end the curse their way." They moved quickly. Roran doused the fire, erasing every trace of smoke. Cassell packed their few weapons, silver-tipped arrows, iron daggers, old maps marked with warnings. The air grew heavy with the metallic scent of coming blood. Aelin's heart hammered as she watched them. What if we just talk to them? She asked. Cassell's laugh was low, bitter. You don't talk to hunters, Omega. You survive them. She swallowed hard. Then teach me. Roran turned, surprised. Teach you? She nodded, trembling but determined. I don't want to be protected, she said. I want to fight. The brothers exchanged a look, Cassell's disbelieving, Roran's proud. Then Cassell tossed her a dagger, its blade catching the morning light. Fine, he said. Lesson 1. Never trust anyone who calls you chosen. His eyes flicked toward the forest. Lesson 2. Run when I say run. The first arrow struck the cabin door, splintering wood inches from Aylin's face. She screamed and ducked as Cassell roared, shifting in a flash of silver and shadow. His body tore through fabric, fur bursting from his skin, claws slashing the air. Roran followed, his transformation smoother, his growl deeper. Aylin backed into the corner as the forest exploded with motion, hunters in black armor, crossbows gleaming, their scent like iron and ash. By order of the Alpha Council, one shouted, surrender the moon-touched. Cassell's voice was barely human. Over my dead body. Then chaos erupted. Wolves and men collided in a blur of teeth and steel. Aylin clutched her dagger, heart pounding. One hunter broke through the wall, grabbing her arm, but before she could react, her blood lit up with silver fire. The dagger burned white in her hand. The hunter screamed as the blade seared through his armor. Aylin didn't remember moving. She only remembered the heat, the light, the wild rhythm in her chest. Cassell turned mid-battle, eyes blazing. Aylin, stop! But she couldn't. The moonfire poured from her veins like a liquid flame, wrapping around the cabin, forcing the hunters back. Then just as suddenly, it stopped. Smoke drifted from her hands. The clearing was silent again, littered with broken arrows and the bodies of the retreating hunters. Roran stumbled forward, blood trickling down his arm. You saved us, he said breathlessly. Aylin drops the dagger, trembling. No, she whispered, tears blurring her vision. I lost control. Cassell's gaze darkened as he looked at the smoking earth. That wasn't control, he said. That was the curse taking root. As dusk fell, they buried the fallen beneath the pines. Aylin sat apart from the twins, staring at her hands. They looked normal again. No light, no fire, only skin. Roran approached her quietly, sitting beside her. You did what you had to do, he said. Don't let Cassell's fear make you doubt that. She shook her head. He's not afraid of me. He's afraid of what I'll become. Roran hesitated, then spoke softly. There's something he hasn't told you. When the curse began, the moon-touched wasn't just a prophecy. It was a bond. 1 Omega, 2 Alphas, 1 heart split between them. Aylin looked up sharply. A bond? He nodded. If it's real, by dawn the curse will choose which twin your power belongs to. Her breath caught. And the other? Roran's gaze fell to the earth. The other dies. Night fell again over Bloodridge. The forest glowed faintly blue beneath a thin mist, and the air smelled of rain and iron. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, throwing long, uneasy shadows. Kale sat sharpening his blade in silence, while Roran bound his wounded arm with strips of cloth. Aline watched them both, torn between fear and something she couldn't name. She felt the strange coal between them grow stronger, as if invisible threads connected their hearts to hers. 1 Omega, 2 Alphas. One must fall. Roran's earlier words echoed like thunder in her mind. When Kale's eyes flicked up and met hers, she saw exhaustion hiding behind his anger. You should sleep, he said. Tomorrow we move east. Aline shook her head. If I close my eyes, I'll dream again. Kale's voice softened. Then stay awake with us. The hours stretched. Rain began to fall, pattering gently against the roof. Roran leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. Do you remember before the curse? He asked his brother quietly. Cale's jaw tightened. No. But Aline noticed his hand tremble on the blade. Roran smiled faintly. He does. He just doesn't like to. He turned to Aline. Cale was supposed to lead the pack after our father. He trained for it, believed in peace. But the curse twisted him. Every time he feels something good, it turns to rage. Cale rose suddenly, pacing. Don't make me your tragedy, Roran. Aline's heart ached watching them, two halves of one broken soul. Maybe the curse isn't choosing who dies, she said softly. Maybe it's waiting for you to stop fighting each other. The brothers stared at her as if she had said something impossible. Lightning flashed outside, and Aline gasped. The cabin walls shimmered, dissolving into silver mist. For a heartbeat, she was somewhere else, standing in a moonlit field, two shadows kneeling before her, one wore chains, the other a crown of ash. Choose, whispered a voice like wind, one for mercy, one for fire. She reached out, but before she could touch them, the vision shattered. She stumbled, and Cale caught her, steadying her by the shoulders. You vanished, he said, alarmed. For a second, you were gone. Her breath came fast. The moon showed me something. It wants me to decide which of you lives. Roran's face paled. Then it's begun. Cale's eyes hardened. No one decides our fate, not even the moon. But the way his hands shook betrayed his fear. After the vision, silence reclaimed the cabin. Roran tended the fire, while Cale sat beside Aline, his expression unreadable. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. Do you believe you can change it? He asked him quietly. She turned to him. I don't know, but I have to try. His gaze lingered on her face, on the faint silver lines still glowing along her wrist. You remind me of our mother. She believed light could heal anything. Aline smiled faintly. Did it? No, Cale said, but she tried anyway. For a rare moment, his guard dropped, and Aline saw the boy he once was, the one who laughed before the curse, who believed the world could be kind. The fire crackled between them, warm and golden, and for a breath, the war outside felt very far away. Just before sunrise, Roran burst through the door, rain dripping from his hair. They've regrouped, the hunters. They've brought the council's hounds. Cale's head snapped up. How far? An hour, maybe less. Aline rose, every muscle trembling. Then the moon's choice doesn't matter if we're dead. Cale slung his sword across his back. It matters, he said, because the moon doesn't decide. We do. He turned to her, eyes fierce. If we die free. Outside, thunder rolled over the ridge, and somewhere in the distance, the first horn sounded. Aline felt the pull in her blood again, stronger than ever. The moonfire whispered through her veins like a heartbeat. Then let's end this, she said. And together, the cursed twins and the chosen Omega stepped into the storm. The storm was merciless. Rain slashed across the trees as they ran, every step sinking into mud and blood. Aylin's cloak whipped behind her like a shadow. Cale led, his sword gleaming each time lightning split the sky, while Roran covered their flank, his wolf eyes burning gold in the dark. Behind them, horns roared through the valley. The council's hunters had found their scent. Keep low, Cale barked. Arrows hissed through the rain, one grazing Aylin's shoulder. She bit back a cry, and Cale spun instantly, fury blazing in his gaze. Touch her again, he snarled into the storm, and I'll tear the stars from your sky. For a heartbeat, even the thunder seemed to pause. Then Roran shouted, To the river! It'll hide our trail! They plunged into the black waters, vanishing beneath the storm's howl. They stumbled ashore on the far bank, breathless. Aylin's arm bled freely now. Roran ripped a strip of his shirt, pressing it to her wound. You're shaking, he said. That arrow was silver. Kale cursed under his breath. Give me your hand. Without hesitation, he drew his blade and sliced his palm. Then he pressed it to her wound. The moment their blood met, the air trembled. Moonlight burst through the clouds, washing over them in silver fire. Aelin gasped as the burn of the wound vanished, replaced by warmth, by him. What did you do? She whispered. Bound you, Kale said hoarsely. You carry our scent now. No hunter can track you apart from us. Roran's jaw clenched. That's not all it means. He met Kale's eyes. She's one of us now. For life. They found shelter in an ancient ruin deep in the forest, a temple swallowed by vines and moonlight. The walls pulsed faintly with runes older than memory. This place, Aelin breathed, it feels alive. Kale ran his hand along the stone. It's a sanctuary of the first moon. Our ancestors built it before the curse. Roran brushed away moss from a carved wolf's face. Legends say a prophecy was sealed here, about a third spirit born to break the chains. He turned to her. You think that's you, don't you? Aelin didn't answer. The runes beneath her fingertips glowed brighter, responding to her heartbeat. I don't think, she said quietly. I know. And as her words echoed through the ruin, the air stirred, an unseen presence awakening. The presence took form, a spectral wolf woven from light and mist. Its voice filled the chamber, calm and terrible. 3 hearts bound by the same moon, yet only 2 may remain beneath its gaze. The one who falters shall feed the dawn. Kel drew his blade. We're not your pawns. But the spirit ignored him. Prove your oath. Only blood freely given may unlock the path. Aelin stepped forward. Then take mine. Kale grabbed her wrist. No, you've bled enough. Roran's hand hovered near his own chest. If this ends the curse, then I'll do it. For the first time, Kale's voice broke. You always try to save everyone. And you never try to save yourself, Roran said softly. They locked eyes, the bond of brothers stronger than any spell. Then both pressed their palms to the stone altar together. The spirit howled, and the temple blazed with silver light. The light consumed everything. When it faded, the twins knelt before her, exhausted, bleeding, but alive. The spirit's voice echoed faintly as it vanished into the night. The choice is not yet made, but now the bond is sealed. Protect the light or perish with it. Kale staggered to his feet, helping Roran up. Aelin reached out to both, tears glimmering in her eyes. We'll break this curse, not by sacrifice, but by love. Kale gave a rough, disbelieving laugh. Love doesn't end curses, Aelin. She met his gaze steadily. Then maybe it's time it did. Outside, the storm cleared, revealing the first fragile rays of dawn over the forest. For the first time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something dangerous and beautiful. The forest looked peaceful at dawn. Dew on the leaves, smoke curling from their small fire, birds calling softly in the mist. But under the quiet, something restless stirred. Aline woke first, her cheek pressed against Kale's shoulder. He hadn't moved all night, keeping watch even as his wounds bled. His eyes flickered open when she shifted. Morning, he murmured. She smiled faintly. Do alphas ever sleep? Not when the world's hunting them, he said. The way he said it wasn't meant to scare her, but it did. Across the fire, Roaring knelt by a stream, washing the blood from his hands. For a moment, he looked almost human again. No curse, no duty, just a man. But the moment passed when Kale's voice cut through the still air. We can't stay here. They'll find us by nightfall. The peace of morning shattered, replaced by the sharp edge of urgency. As Aline packed her things, She felt a strange heat spreading across her collarbone. She looked down and froze. A crescent-shaped mark glowed faintly beneath her skin, silver as moonlight. "Kale," she whispered. He turned, and when he saw it, his face went white. "That's the moon seal," he said quietly. "It only appears when the prophecy chooses." Roran rose slowly, his expression unreadable. "Then it's true. She's the Omega who can end it." Kale shook his head. "No, the seal means she's being watched." Aline's voice trembled. "By who?" The twins exchanged a look neither wanted to explain. Then, before Kale could answer, the ground trembled beneath them. The river went still. Every sound in the forest stopped, and from somewhere unseen, a low, melodic voice whispered through the trees. "Found you." Figures stepped out of the mist, dark shapes in armor made from bone and ash. At their center stood a tall woman draped in silver furs, her eyes gleaming like mirrors. "Kale, Roran," she said, her voice smooth as poisoned honey. "Still running from your birthright?" Aline felt the air tighten around her. "Who is she?" Kale's hand went to his sword. "Lasara," he growled, "the moon priestess, keeper of the curse." Lasara smiled, slow and cruel. "And now you've brought me the girl who can end it." Her gaze landed on Aline. "Do you even know what they've hidden from you, child?" Aline's heart hammered. "What are you talking about?" The priestess stepped closer. "Your blood doesn't end the curse. It feeds it. You are its heart." The words hit like a blade. Kale shouted, "Don't listen to her." But Aline's eyes filled with tears. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Roran stepped forward, pain flickering in his eyes. "Aline, we didn't know how to tell you. The prophecy was always unclear." "Unclear?" she snapped. "You bonded me with blood. You said it was to protect me." Kale reached for her, but she stepped back. "You used me," she whispered. Kale's voice broke. "No, we saved you. You think we'd risk our lives for a lie?" But the mark on her collarbone pulsed brighter, its light reflecting in her tears. Lasara raised her staff. "You don't have to die for them, child. Come with me. I can break the bond before the dawn." For one terrible second, Aline hesitated. Then Roran shouted, "She's lying!" Lasara's smile widened. "Am I?" And in that instant of doubt, the air split with a blinding flash, and the twins were thrown apart like rag dolls into the trees. Aline's scream echoed through the forest as the light faded. Smoke coiled through the clearing where Lasara stood untouched, her eyes glinting with triumph. "The moon takes what it's owed," she said softly. Aline ran to Kale, shaking him. His body was limp, his breath shallow. "No," she cried, pressing her hands to his chest. "Kale, please." Roaring crawled from the wreckage, blood streaking his face. "Aline, don't. She'll take you." Lasara lifted her hand, and silver chains shot from her palm, wrapping around Aline's wrists. "The dawn demands its sacrifice," the priestess whispered. Aline met her gaze, trembling, but not afraid anymore. "Then it will have to fight for it." The mark on her skin flared like fire. The forest roared to life again, wind howling, the earth splitting beneath their feet. And for the first time, the moon itself seemed to tremble. The forest erupted in chaos. Wind tore the trees apart as if the moon itself had dropped from the sky. Ellen struggled against the glowing chains that bound her wrists, their light biting into her skin. "You can't win!" she shouted. Lasara only smiled, raising her staff as the blood moon broke through the clouds, huge, red, and pulsing. "The curse feeds tonight," the priestess hissed. Behind her, Kale staggered to his feet, blood pouring from his shoulder. His golden eyes burned brighter than the storm. "Over my dead body!" he snarled. He lunged, claws bursting through his skin, half man, half wolf, a creature of raw fury. Roran joined him, shifting too, his form wreathed in silver light. Two beasts, one shadow, one flame, crashing against a goddess. The ground cracked beneath their power. The sky itself seemed to scream. Lysara slammed her staff into the earth, and the chains around Ellen glowed hotter. "You were never meant to love them," she whispered. "You were meant to contain them." Ellen fell to her knees, pain lancing through her body as images flooded her mind. Two infants crying under a blood moon, a king cursing his own sons, and a woman who looked like her falling to her death. The truth ripped through her chest. The first moon-touched Omega hadn't failed. She'd chosen to die rather than destroy them. Tears streamed down Ellen's face. "Not this time," she said through clenched teeth. She dug her nails into her palms, blood mixing with moonlight. The chains shuddered. "You can't break them," Lysara screamed. "I don't have to," Ellen gasped. "I just have to change what they mean." The silver links burst apart in a rain of sparks. Kale roared, breaking through Lysara's defense long enough to drive his blade into her side. "This ends now," he shouted. But the priestess only laughed, blood glimmering black under the moonlight. "Foolish boy, you've already given me what I needed." The blood on her hands began to glow, and Kale's strength faltered. He fell to his knees, gasping. Roaring caught him, horror twisting his face. "Kale, she's draining you!" Lysara raised her arms, one twinned for the curse, one to remain. It's the law of the moon. Ellen's scream tore through the storm. "No!" She ran forward, pressing her hands to Kale's chest. His heartbeat flickered weakly beneath her palms. "Take me instead," she begged. Lysara's smile curved like a blade. "So be it." The red light surged toward Ellen, but Roran moved faster, throwing himself between them. The blast struck him instead. The blast knocked them all to the ground. When the light faded, Roran lay still. Kale crawled to him, shaking his brother's shoulders. "Roran, don't you dare—" His voice broke. Roran's eyes opened faintly, glowing silver. "Guess I took my turn?" he whispered with a small, broken smile. Kale's tears fell freely now, mixing with the rain. "No, not like this." Ellen knelt beside them, her hands trembling. "The prophecy," she whispered. "3 hearts bound by 1 moon, only 2 may remain beneath its gaze." Lysara's laughter echoed faintly as her body disintegrated into ash. Her voice hissed. "The curse demands balance. It always will." Roran's hinders brushed Ellen's cheek. "Then make it worth it." His hand fell away as the last light faded from his eyes. The storm stopped. The forest fell silent. The moon, for the first time in centuries, bled. Kale sat there, holding his brother's body in his arms as the red moon began to fade. Ellen reached out, resting a hand on his shoulder. "He saved us," she whispered. Kale looked up at her, his eyes hollow. "Then who saves me?" he asked. His voice was raw, shattered. Ellen's tears fell quietly. "He'd want you to live," she said. "He'd want you to love." The mark on her collarbone flickered one last time before fading completely, leaving only a faint scar. "The curse is broken," she said softly, but Kale shook his head. "No, the curse just changed." In the distance, the first light of dawn touched the treetops, but for Kale and Ellen, the night had only just begun. They had broken fate. Now, they had to live with what it left behind. The forest had gone eerily still. The moon's red glow was gone, replaced by the gray, sickly light of dawn. Smoke still rose from the torn earth where Lysara had stood. Aelin sat in the mud, staring at her hands still stained with Roran's blood. Her body felt empty, her heartbeat too loud in her ears. Kale knelt a few feet away, motionless, his eyes fixed on the lifeless form of his brother. "He's gone," he whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it real. His voice cracked, breaking into silence. "He was the only reason I kept fighting," he said finally. Aylin turned her head toward him, her voice small. "Then let me be another reason." Kale didn't look at her. The wind blew through the clearing, carrying the scent of rain and death. He just whispered, "You don't understand, Omega. I don't know how to breathe without him." They buried Roran beneath a silver-leafed tree overlooking the valley, the highest point on the ridge, where the wind sang softly through the branches. Kale dug with his bare hands until his knuckles bled, refusing to stop even when the ground turned to stone. Aylin wanted to help, but he wouldn't let her. "He was my brother," Kale said quietly. "This is my burden." When the grave was done, Aylin placed a carved wolf stone at the head. She whispered a few words, simple human words, and then stepped back. Kale stood in silence for a long time. Then, slowly, he drew his dagger and sliced the line across his palm. "Blood for blood, until the moon takes me too." Aylin flinched. "Don't say that." But Kale only pressed his hand against the earth, letting his blood sink into the soil. "You can break curses, Aylin, but you can't break grief." That night, they camped by a dying fire. The forest had gone strangely quiet, as if mourning. Kale sat apart, staring into the flames. His once fierce golden eyes looked dull, hollow. Aylin watched him, unsure whether to speak. "You haven't eaten," she said gently. "You haven't slept either," he replied without looking at her. She sighed, pulling her cloak tighter. "You think you're the only one who lost him?" Her words were sharper than she meant. Kale's gaze lifted, his pain flashing like lightning. "You didn't grow up with him. You didn't fight beside him." "No," she said quietly, "but I loved him too." The fire popped between them. Then, softer, she added, "He believed in us, in you. Don't throw that away." Kale turned away, his shoulders shaking. He said, "I'm trying, but I don't remember how to live for myself." Sometime after midnight, Aylin awoke to the sound of wind whispering her name. She sat up, eyes darted toward the trees. "Roran," she whispered. The breeze brushed her cheek, carrying the faint scent of wolf fur and pine. She followed it to the edge of the clearing, where the silver tree glowed faintly under the moonlight. For a moment, she thought she saw him, Roran, standing beneath its branches, smiling sadly. "You're not done yet," the whisper said. Her throat tightened. "What do I do?" she asked the air. "Help him remember," came the faint reply. Then the wind faded, and the forest fell silent again. Aylin returned to camp, her heart racing. Kale was still awake, staring at the sky. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "The moon's too quiet," he said. "It used to speak to me." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it's waiting for you to listen." When the first light touched the ridge, Kale finally spoke. "You're still here," he said, not turning toward her. Aylin stood beside him, watching the sunrise through the mist. "Where else would I go?" He exhaled shakily. "You should have left. You're free now. The curse is broken." Aylin shook her head. "No, Kale. The curse ended because of love, and that means you don't get to quit." He turned to her then, eyes red from tears he refused to shed. "What if love was the curse all along?" She reached up, touching his jaw gently. "Then we'll learn how to live with it." Kale looked at her for a long moment, then, finally, nodded. "One day, but not today." As the sun rose higher, he whispered something Roran used to say. "We'll both take turns on fate till dawn." Aylin smiled through her tears. "Then let's begin." Days passed in silence. The forest began to heal. The air no longer smelled of ash and blood. Yet Kale moved like a shadow, silent, distant, trapped in a storm that no one else could see. Aelin followed him as he hunted, as he patrolled the ridges, never speaking unless he had to. At night, when he thought she slept, she would hear him whisper Roran's name into the darkness. One evening, as mist coiled over the valley, she finally spoke. "He's not gone, Kale, not completely." His jaw tightened. "Don't start with ghost stories." "It's not a story," she said. "I heard him, that night under the silver tree." Kale turned sharply, golden eyes flaring. "Don't you dare use his memory to comfort me." Aelin's voice didn't rise. "I'm not. I'm saying he's waiting. For you." The wind sighed through the trees then, low and familiar, almost like a breath between brothers. The next morning, Kale woke to find Aelin standing at the river, her reflection trembling in the water. The faint scar on her collarbone glowed again, but softer this time, white instead of silver. "It came back," she whispered. Kale stepped closer, wary. "That's not the moon seal." "No," she said, tracing it gently. "It feels different, alive." He frowned. "Alive? How?" She met his gaze, like it's calling something home. He stared at her for a long moment, then said, "The curse ended, but maybe the bond didn't." "A bond between who?" Aelin asked. "You and me?" Kale shook his head slowly. "No, between the living and the lost." A shiver ran down her spine. "Then maybe it's time we listened." She reached for his hand. For the first time, he didn't pull away. Their fingers brushed, and the mark pulsed brighter. Somewhere far above, the clouds began to move, revealing the pale, waiting moon. They climbed to the ridge by dusk where Roran's grave overlooked the valley. The wind was gentle, carrying the faint hum of something ancient. "Do you hear that?" Aelin whispered. Kale nodded slowly. "It's singing." As they approached, light seeps from the valley, threads of white weaving through the soil around the silver tree. "He's here," Aelin breathed. Kale fell to his knees, pressing his hands against the ground. "Roran, could you hear me? I'm sorry. I should have protected you." The light flickered, then brightened, wrapping around his hand like a living thing. A voice filled the air, not loud, but sure. "You did." Kale froze. The wind carried words that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You kept her alive. That's all I ever wanted." Aelin's eyes filled with tears. "Roran." The light pulsed once more, then faded into the roots of the tree. Kale stayed kneeling, shoulders shaking, tears finally breaking free. "He forgave me," he whispered. "He always would have," Aelin said softly. She knelt beside him, resting her hand over his heart. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Kale looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the battle. "You keep saying that, Kale. Why?" She smiled faintly. "Because someone once told me that love doesn't end curses, it changes them." Kale let out a broken laugh, half pain, half relief. He said that too. Then maybe he was right. The air shimmered faintly around them, warm and silver. The scar on her collarbone flared once more, and this time, a second light appeared, faint but steady, glowing on Kale's chest, right over his heart. The same shape, the same mark. Two halves of one symbol. Night fell slowly over the ridge. The forest below sparkled with fireflies like fallen stars. Kale stood beside the silver tree, his voice steadier now. "I don't know what comes next." "We don't have to," Aelin replied. "We just have to walk it." He looked down at her hand, still holding his. "You're not afraid?" She smiled faintly, terrified, "But I'm not alone." He exhaled, the first real breath of peace he had taken since Roran's death. "Then we walk," he said quietly. As they turned away from the grave, The wind rose behind them, gentle, protective, like a farewell. A single leaf drifted down from the silver tree, glowing faintly as it landed at their feet. Aelin bent to pick it up. Etched across its surface were two words in ancient runes: "Keep breathing." She smiled through her tears. "Looks like he still has the last word." It began as a whisper on the wind. The forest had been quiet for weeks, its wounds slowly mending. But that night, as Kayala and Aelin camped beneath the Silmer tree's shadow, the air thickened. The stars dimmed, swallowed by a red haze creeping across the horizon. "No," Kaio breathed. He rose, eyes locked on the moon crawling up from behind the mountains. Red blood, pulsing like a heartbeat. "That can't be possible," Aelin said, standing beside him. "The curse was broken." Kael's voice was low. "Maybe not broken. Maybe just borrowed." The earth rumbled softly beneath their feet, and the silver tree's leaves began to wilt, one by one. The same whisper that had once sounded like Roran's voice now carried something colder. The balance must be restored. Kael's hand tightened on Aelin's wrist. "It's not Roran this time," he said. "It's the moon itself." By morning, the village below the ridge had changed. Wolves were restless. Packs that once bowed to Kael's authority now snarled at the air, pacing the borders as if something unseen circled them. The elders gathered, their faces pale. "We've seen this before," one whispered, "when the twin alphas were born under the same moon." Aelin frowned. "You mean when Kael and Roran were born?" The elder nodded. "Twins were never meant to share a soul. The moon took one to restore balance. But if the mark has returned, it means she's coming for the other." Kael stiffened. "She?" "The Crimson Mother," the elder said. "The first wolf, the one who cursed our bloodline." Aelin felt the mark on her collarbone burn hot like fire beneath her skin. "Then she's coming through me." The elder's gaze fell on her, filled with fear and awe. "Through you, or for you?" That night, Aelin dreamed. The forest around her was silver and red, the ground slick with reflected moonlight. In the center of it stood a woman cloaked in blood and mist, eyes glowing like molten gold. "So, this is the one who tamed my sons," the voice said, deep and echoing. "You carry their mark, and my wrath." Aelin's voice shook. "Why bring back the blood moon? Haven't you taken enough?" The figure smiled faintly. "Mortals always mistake mercy for weakness. The bond you carry has upset the order. 2 wolves, 1 heart. That cannot stand." Aelin stepped closer, trembling but unyielding. "Then take me instead." The mother tilted her head. "You would die for them?" "I already would have." A silence followed, ancient, heavy. Then the woman's voice softened. "So it be. At dawn, your heart will decide whose blood the moon keeps." The dream shattered, leaving her gasping awake. When Aelin woke, Kael was gone. Panic clawed at her chest until she found him on the ridge, standing before the silver tree with a dagger in hand. "She spoke to me," he said, without turning. "The Crimson Mother. She said if one of us dies under the moon, the curse ends forever." "No," Ellen cried. She ran forward, gripping his wrist. "That's not her mercy, it's her trap." His golden eyes softened. "You think I don't know that? But I won't let you bleed for me." "And you think I'll watch you die?" she shouted. "We're done trading deaths, Kael." The wind screamed, and above them the moon flared crimson, burning brighter than ever. The silver tree cracked down the middle, light spilling from its heart. The mark on Aylin's skin and the one on Kael's chest began to pulse in unison, faster, stronger, until the world itself seemed to shake. Kael dropped the dagger. "Then what do we do?" he whispered. Aylin took his face in her hands, tears glinting like shards of moonlight. "We don't let her choose for us." "You mean we break her law like we broke the curse?" The ground trembled, the blood moon roaring above them. Aylin pressed her forehead to his. "If she wants balance, she'll have it, but on our terms." She kissed him, fierce, desperate, alive. Their marks burned white hot, the light merging until the red in the sky began to fade. The wind howled, furious, ancient. "You cannot rewrite what was written," thundered the Crimson Mother's voice. Aylin's eyes flashed silver. "Watch us." A burst of light erupted from where they stood, swallowing the ridge in a blinding wave. And then, for the first time in centuries, the blood moon cracked and bled away into dawn. When the light faded, the forest was no longer the same. The silver tree stood broken, glowing faintly from within like dying embers. The sky had gone pale again, the red wiped clean, but the world felt heavy, silent, as if holding its breath. Aylin lay in the ashes of moonlight, Kael beside her, both breathing, both alive. But his skin was cold, too cold. "Kael," she whispered, shaking him gently. His eyes fluttered open, but they weren't gold anymore. They were fading, like sunlight through fog. "You did it," he murmured. "You stopped her." Aylin's voice broke. "We did it. Together." He smiled faintly. "Then let me rest." She gripped his hand tighter. "Don't you dare." The trees whispered like mourners in the wind, and from deep within the forest, a sound rose, soft, eerie, and growing louder. Wolves, dozens of them, coming closer. Not enemies this time, witnesses. As the pack emerged from the shadows, they didn't snarl or circle. They knelt, one by one. Enormous beasts lowered their heads before her, eyes glowing silver in the dim dawn light. Aylin looked around, stunned. What are they doing? Kael's voice was faint. They're bowing to their Louna. Her chest tightened. No. To us. The wolves began to howl, a song both sorrowful and beautiful, echoing through the valley. It wasn't a cry of war. It was reverence. The air shimmered faintly, and in that sound, Aylin could almost hear Roran's laughter, warm, free, unchained. He's gone, Kael said quietly, truly gone. She nodded through tears. No, he's part of them now, of you. Kael tried to sit up, but his strength failed him. If the moon took my brother, it won't take you too, he said, trying to rise. It already tried. Aylin's eyes burned silver, and it lost. But the calm didn't last. The sky trembled once more, a thin crack of red slicing through the pale morning clouds. A shadow formed at the edge of the forest, vast, coiling like smoke. The Crimson Mother wasn't gone. She was changing shape, her wrath bleeding into the earth. Defy me, and the world will turn to ash, her voice thundered. Aylin stood up, her silver mark blazing. Then burn us, she said, stepping forward. We've lived under your curse long enough." Kale staggered to his feet beside her, one hand gripping his chest, the other finding hers. Together they faced the bleeding sky. The wind screamed, tearing at their hair, their clothes. The wolves roared in unison, their bodies surrounding the pair in a living circle. Aelin raised her chin. "We're not your children anymore." She lifted her hand toward the sun's first ray. "We're free." The earth split open, light and darkness colliding in a violent storm. The wolves howled louder, their bodies glowing silver white as power surged through the pack bond. Aelin felt it rush through her, Roran's courage, Kale's strength, her own defiance, merging into something pure. The curse isn't a chain, it's a choice. The Crimson Mother screamed, a sound that shook the mountains. Her shadow reached for them, but the light from their joined hands burned it away. Every ancient law, written in blood, shattered in that moment. The moon's last fragment crumbled to dust, and the wind carried it like snow. Kale fell to his knees, gasping, but alive. The mark on his chest faded into faint scar tissue. Aelin dropped beside him, her heart pounding. "It's over," she whispered. He looked up at her, breathless, trembling. "Then what are we now?" She smiled through tears. "Something new." The storm eased. The first true dawn in centuries broke through the clouds, golden and clean. The wolves lifted their heads, their eyes no longer cursed, but soft, amber, alive. The forest hummed again, rivers thawed, birds sang, and the air smelled of renewal. Kale reached for Aelin's hand. "You could have left," he said quietly. "You could have let the curse take me." She smiled faintly. "Then who would make sure you stop brooding?" He laughed, a sound raw and beautiful. Around them, the wolves began to shift, one by one, shedding fur for skin, becoming human again for the first time in generations. Aelin stood among them, wind in her hair, moonlight fading from her eyes. "It's time we live." Kale rose beside her, their hands still intertwined. Above them, the sky healed into blue. And for the first time, the world felt whole again. The world was quiet now, too quiet. Days had passed since the moon cracked, and the forest was still trying to understand what peace felt like. Aelin sat at the edge of the ridge, watching mist drift through the valley where the silver tree once stood. Its ashes glittered faintly, carried away by every breeze like whispers of the past. Kale stood behind her, the faint scar of his moon mark peeking from his collarbone. "The pack's rebuilding," he said softly. "The old ones are teaching the new how to live without chains." Aelin smiled faintly. "And you?" He hesitated. "I keep expecting to wake up and find the curse still there." She looked at him over her shoulder, eyes soft. "Then stop waiting for the past to come back." He met her gaze for a long moment. "That's hard," he said, "when everything I love came from it." That night, they built a fire where the silver tree once stood. The wolves, now men and women again, gathered in a circle, their faces lit by the flames. No one spoke for a while. Then Kale placed something in the fire, a pendant carved from a fragment of the tree's root. "For Roran," he said quietly, "for the brother who carried my rage so I could carry hope." Aelin reached for his hand, tears glimmering. "He saved us all," she whispered. Kale nodded, voice breaking. He deserved more than a curse. The fire hissed softly, sparks dancing upward like stars. Aelin leaned her head against his shoulder. "You hear that?" she murmured. "The wind." He nodded. "It sounds like him." For a moment, both of them closed their eyes. And in that hush, the air shifted. Soft laughter, faint as memory, echoing between the trees. They smiled. Roaring was gone, but not lost. Weeks passed and the forest began to heal. The rivers turned clear again, the birds returned to sing at dawn. The village that once feared the twins now welcomed them. Children ran through the streets unafraid of the old legends. Aelin walked through the market one morning, her fingers brushing baskets of wild berries. A little girl stopped her and whispered, "Are you the Luna who broke the moon?" Aelin smiled gently. "No," she said. "I'm the girl who learned not to fear it." Kale joined her, carrying the crate of wood. "You know," he said, grinning faintly, "you could get used to this." "What, being a myth?" "No," he said, brushing a leaf from her hair. "Being happy." She looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time, didn't flinch from the word. Maybe, after everything, happiness wasn't a luxury. It was a choice. That evening, the two of them returned to the ridge where it all began. The stars burned clearer now, free from blood and shadow. Kale stood beside her, quiet for a long time before he spoke. "You could leave, you know. The curse is gone. You're not bound to me anymore." Aelin turned to him, her voice soft but sure. "Kale, I was never bound by the curse. I stayed because I wanted to." He looked down, his jaw trembling. "You could have had a life without pain. Pain made me strong. It brought me to you." His breath caught. Slowly, she reached for his hand. "We've both been marked by loss, but that's not what defines us." She placed his hand over her heart. "This does." Kale closed his eyes, his thumb tracing her pulse. "Then I'll remember this, for as long as I breathe." Later, after Kale had fallen asleep by the dying fire, Aelin remained awake, staring at the sky. The stars shimmered like shards of the broken moon. She thought of everything they'd lost, and everything they'd rebuild from the ruins. For the first time, her heart didn't ache from fear or guilt, but from the quiet fullness of being alive. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, unsure if she spoke to Rorin, to the mother, or to the version of herself who once ran terrified through these woods. The wind stirred gently, almost in reply. She smiled, curling closer to Kale, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. The world had turned, the curse had fallen, and the wolves had learned to live again. Tomorrow would bring change, but tonight was still, and that stillness was its own kind of miracle. Dawn arrived softly, spilling gold across the ridge where the silver tree once stood. The ashes had vanished overnight, replaced by new growth, small white flowers pushing through the soil, their petals glowing faintly as if remembering the moon. Aelin knelt beside them, fingertips brushing one delicate bloom. "They're called night-born lilies," Kale said behind her. "They only grow after a curse dies." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe the world's finally breathing again." He stepped closer, the sunlight painting his scars in gold. "It's strange," he murmured, "to wake up and not feel the pull of the moon anymore." She looked up at him. "Freedom always feels strange at first." For a long moment, they just stood there, the wind cool and clean around them, the forest alive again. Then Kale whispered, almost to himself, I think this is what Rowan wanted us to see. Later that morning, the pack gathered at the edge of the forest. Men, women, and wolves, standing together under the clear sky. No one wore armor. No one bowed. They stood as equals for the first time. Aelin stepped forward, her voice steady. For generations, we lived under fear. Of the moon, of each other, of ourselves. But no curse can live in hearts that choose love over chains. The crowd murmured, some weeping quietly. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder and turned to them. The blood moon is gone. Its mark is ours no longer. We are wolves by birth, not by bond. The pack raised their voices in one long, triumphant howl that echoed through the mountains. The sound wasn't rage this time. It was release, freedom. Rowan's name was whispered in every breath of it, carried to the heavens as the last ember of the curse faded forever. When the ceremony ended, Kale and Aelin walked through the forest hand in hand. The world felt new, colors brighter, scents sharper, and air sweeter. They passed children chasing fireflies in daylight, women laughing as they washed linen in the river, men building homes instead of fortresses. You changed everything, Kale said quietly. Aelin shook her head. We did. He stopped her by the old bridge that crossed the stream. No, he said softly. You reminded me what it means to be human. His words hung between them, heavy and tender. Aelin smiled, though her eyes shimmered. Then promise me something. When the moon rises again, don't look for the curse in it. Look for hope. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Only if you promise to stay. Always, she whispered. And for once, it didn't sound like a wish. It sounded like truth. That night, the stars burned bright again. Aelin sat by the fire alone while Kale spoke with the elders. The flames flickered across her face as she took out the pendant Kale had made, carved from what was left of the silver tree. Inside it was a single strand of white wolf fur, Rowan's. She held it tightly, whispering, We kept your promise, Rowan. We made it mean something. The fire hissed, and for a moment, she thought she heard his voice again, faint, warm, content. Kale returned, sitting beside her without a word. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. Neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, and above them the moon rose. Pale, whole, peaceful, not red, not cursed, just there. Look, Kale said quietly. It's smiling. Aelin laughed softly through her tears. Then let's smile back. The night, for once, held no fear. When morning came again, it was gentle and full of light. The forest shimmered with dew, and the first rays of sun slipped through the pines. Aelin woke with Kale's arm around her, the fire nothing but embers. She watched the sky blush with color, her heart steady. We did it, she whispered. Kale stirred beside her, eyes opening slowly. No, he said with a smile. We survived it. She laughed softly, turning to face him. That's the same thing. They stood and watched the horizon. Two souls who had defied fate, loved through loss, and rebuilt a world from the ashes of a curse. As they walked down the hill toward the village, the wind carried one last whisper through the trees. It wasn't sorrow. It wasn't warning. It was gratitude. A voice saying, Live well. And they did. Together. Always.
Thank you for staying till the end.
Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.